I went to my first meeting in 1976.
Wow.
But I'm clean for 12 years, so that gives you a little idea that if you can do the math, 35 minus 12, I obviously have not been clean since I came around. I just went because people I knew were going. I was actually in Carrier Clinic as a mental patient, but they didn't have the rehab or anything yet. They didn't really understand about addiction yet. I was in there, really should have been rehab, but it wasn't. So all my friends were addicts. All my friends were the drunks and addicts. So got to my first meeting and was like, okay, what is this, church, you know? And it was, you know, that was the last time I went for a little while, but I started going to meetings sometimes when I was younger just to shut everybody up, which I'm sure everybody here has somebody in their life that has done that for them. And of course, you know, that doesn't really work. Because if you don't go to be clean for yourself, then it definitely doesn't work. I've tried it for my ex-husband. I've actually been married to three now. I've been married to 3 addicts. The one I'm married to now is in recovery with me, and I met him in recovery. So that's a lot better than, actually my second marriage was really the longest relationship in my life to date. It was 16 years with him, and we were running partners, and we went to meetings together, went back out together, went to meetings again together, went back out again. He went to rehab for 3 months, and I didn't have the privilege of going because I had to stay home and take care of stuff and try to pay back all the bills. Everything was such a wreck. But so I kind of from the beginning have the unique perspective of both being the addict and the codependent, and I kind of was, I would say, raised to be codependent. And if my mom sees this tape, please don't be insulted, but you know that we do, and I think that our whole culture really kind of promotes that. You know, well, you've got to make them blah blah blah. You know, I found it. I'm still finding out after all these years that I still want to control people, and I couldn't control myself, so it's like doubly awkward. So I got married to my second husband in 1989, and we were clean at that time. We had 3 years or something like that, maybe something like that. It doesn't matter. But those were actually really good years with us together, and we had our first child after a year and a half, and I kind of stopped going to meetings because she was a colicky, screaming child, and it was more stress to go than to not go. So I just stopped going, and that's kind of the beginning. If you don't go to meetings, stay with your network, and work the steps. Those are basically the three, I think, the main 3 things of staying clean. So my first thing, stop going to meetings. And I still did talk to my sponsor, and I wasn't working any steps. I didn't even know what that meant, actually. I was clean for quite a long time that time. But I tried to pretend to myself that I was working the steps just to do it so I could tell myself that I did it. But I didn't feel it. I didn't understand it. I did write my 4th step, and I worked the 5th step, but it was I didn't really get anything out of it. Because I wasn't doing it out of my own desperation. I was doing it because I wanted to be good and be, do all my homework or whatever. Oh yeah, by the way, I was not addicted to any particular thing, in case you're wondering. I didn't have really any drug of choice. I was everything. Weed and alcohol was the baseline, and then whatever happened to come, that would be fine and great. And I'll ask questions after I do it, and then I'll be like, ah! I just was a party girl, and so I got, in a way, that's lucky, because I didn't have to have a physical withdrawal from anything to get clean, so I really didn't need to go to rehab. And even though I was kind of jealous when my kid's father, my second husband, when he went away, I was jealous. You can lie around and smoke cigarettes and eat Oreos all day while I bust my butt working. That doesn't seem fair, but it was, he was always so much worse than me. That was my war cry, which it is true, he was worse than me, but that doesn't mean that I was okay, I was absolutely far from okay, but because I had this really bad example of how bad things could be, it seemed like I was okay because I was taking care of everything. So we had my daughter, and I stayed clean somehow, just talking to people on the phone and an occasional meeting. But 5 years later, I had my son, and I was starting to get suspicious that I had enough denial to not think my husband would ever pick up again, because he was so adamantly strict Nazi NA that I figured he'll never. Somebody said to me, you have to face it, he might be using. I'm like, it's not possible. That's the exact words I said, it's not possible. But I finally asked him one day, because I thought I smelled like faint alcohol, and my son was only maybe a couple months old. And I said, I thought I smelled alcohol on you, because we were fighting, and I was using this as an example of how far apart we've grown. And he said to my daughter, could you please take your brother in the other room for a minute? And then I just was like, the sinking feeling. I was just saying that, I can feel it all over again. And he told me that, yeah, he's been using sometimes away on business trips and going over to our brother-in-laws and stuff. And it was like not that serious compared to what he used to be doing. And at that moment, that was the moment when, if it was me now, well, I don't really know what it would be now, because if my husband, I can't even picture him using, but I think if it was me now, and it was the same husband, I would have said, all right, either go to rehab, or get out, or, but you can't stay here. But then I was like, so beaten down, I hadn't worked in many, many years. I was home with my children for like 8 years, and I said, all right, I don't know, like, I didn't say it's okay to use, but what can I say, And over a period of time, because he thought now that I knew it was like carte blanche, it's okay now to do it in front of me, and somehow along the way, this is the funny part of my story, somehow along the way, I had a friend that was in the program that I stayed close with that was a chef, and I learned really great cooking techniques from her. And when I was staying home with the children, I used to make all these really fancy things, and like demi-glace sauce, reduced Cabernet sauce, and whatever. She said to me, you have to use really good wine. You can't use the crappy cooking wine because it's going to taste bad. So I was like, okay, because I really didn't have any desire. So I always used to have wine in my refrigerator, and I never looked at it. But one day, I'm cooking, and I just was like, I wonder what this tastes like. Like, what? How can I wonder that? I've had so much of it in my life. I had these little cups. They were little espresso cups from Israel. They looked like a shot glass, and I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to taste it. I'm not going to drink it. And I poured it in. A little sip, one sip. That was it. And I'm like, well, that's pretty good. Okay. And that was it. That was it. I didn't do it again. And then I don't remember the exact period of time, but like I did it again. And then eventually, I had like put this much wine in the bottom of a thing of seltzer, and I'm thinking, but that's not really drinking. And and my one friend came over, where she had been in France and had all these special wines from France, and she said, do you want to taste it? And I went in the cabinet, and I pulled out that little espresso cup, and she's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, I'm just going to taste it. She goes, get a glass. And I just went, okay. And it was like, that was the minute I kind of admitted to myself what I was doing, but like, I have no idea really when it was that I picked up again, because I was doing this, faking myself out thing for a while, so I'm not really sure, but I did, once I picked up smoking weed again, then it was over. Then I knew there was no more denial, but I'll tell you what, I had 9 years then. I never believed I was not an addict. I just thought, I got to do what I got to do to get through staying married. I can't support my children. I haven't worked in years. I didn't believe I could do anything. I was always about that big in my own self-worth. I know, it was a kind of a verbally abusive relationship, and I was pretty abusive too, to tell you the truth. And I would break things and throw fits and try to get him to hit me so that I could get a restraining order, this nuts stuff. I had a couple, 2.5 years or so, of just like using whenever I want. It was just drinking and weed, and I say that because I didn't really go as, they say it's always worse as soon as you pick up, but I kind of controlled it, because the controlling person that I am, I just stayed. I didn't drive my kids around, everybody was fed, so I felt like, whatever, because I have to stay married and I'll be able to do this for 18 years until my son is moving out. I'm going to manage this, you know, but eventually I couldn't take it anymore. He had gotten worse and worse and worse, and it was drawing me into trying all these weird things that my ex-husband used to be a scientist. So he was actually making stuff in the basement. And be like, oh, drugs with me. And I once in a while I did, and I didn't like any of that. I didn't want to not know how I was feeling, and I really actually wanted to be clean, but I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stay in that marriage. I was very miserable. I felt really, really isolated, so I just finally went out and had an affair, which I'm not proud of, because that's not really the way to get out of a relationship, but I did. And it really hurt everybody, and it destroyed the family. But on the flip side, which is good for me, but maybe not so good for him, I realized, like, I don't have to be miserable anymore. And after just a short period of being out cheating, I decided this is a bunch of bullshit, excuse my language, and I know what I have to do. Like, it's kind of one night I had like a spiritual awakening. My last night high, I actually had given up. I said, I'm not drinking anymore. This is out of control, but I'm going to smoke weed. So all addicts have those stories. I'm just going to smoke weed. My husband has that, my current, present, forever husband. He always tells that story. You end up at the end of the day, you're usually like, you know, out doing coke or something. But no. I decided I'm only going to smoke weed. I was at my brother's, and we were singing songs and being silly. And I actually had a really fun time that night. But I went outside to have a cigarette, and another thing I've given up since. And like, I just looked at the moon, and I felt like the moon was talking to me. And I just looked up and went, I know. Okay, I know, I have to go back. That's it. I've always known I'd have to go back, and I was perfectly comfortable to go back. I was ashamed, but I always knew that NA was still going to be there for me, and I was right, thank God. And there were people there that I knew from before, when I went back a few years later. So I went back, and I ended up getting the strength to dissolve my marriage, get a job. All this happened in the first 6 months. I got my own car, I bought my own house, I got a job, I turned my job into a career. I'm a hairdresser, but I made it. I did work in a swanky salon in Princeton that charges way too much money, but I'm really good, so people pay, you know. And I was able to do it, and I got clean, and I stayed clean that time. And it just goes to show you, I mean, I had a year one time that we used for a few days, then I got clean again, and that was when I stayed clean for nine years, and then I went out for 2.5 years, and now I'm clean for 12 years, just this past October. But this time, I only did it for myself, and I wanted to be clean. I knew it was definitely better than using, but like, I had to figure that out after all of those years. Not to say that everybody here's loved ones are going to take that long, because I pray for you that they don't, but like, there was nothing anyone could do that would make me understand until I understood. And like, going back and doing it with, I was so desperate because I was so scared that everything wasn't going to work out, and I had to work so hard and figure out how to get babysitting for my kids for half the week, and do things I didn't want to do, like split custody just to get the marriage done with. And I was really afraid, and I had to pray that, God, I can't believe I'm choking up, that they would be in the car with him, and that it wouldn't end up with somebody dead or maimed. Oh my God, just welling up, but I used to have to pray. Maybe that's denial, like, because they really could have been killed. There was a pretty serious accident the first summer, and my daughter, she hit her head on just the seat in front of her and had a pretty bad scar. I don't know, actually, if that may have contributed all these years to a lot of the problems she had. I'm not sure. Like, we never really had her checked neurologically, but she's had a lot of emotional stuff, which has a lot to do with our using and our divorce, and also the fact that her father's still not in recovery. He's semi-clean right now, but that's a long story. I don't need to tell his story. I told his story enough. That was my person that I tried to change most of all in this world, until we split up and then became my daughter, who is not an addict. But like, this program, it's the same the way that we try to control everyone around us, I think it goes also for like mentally unstable, emotionally problematic, whatever, anger people, anything that's like that you can't control it. It's all the same. And actually, my husband and I, or my daughter's stepdad, went to some Marathon meetings. Actually, that's how I first saw Bill. I recognize a couple people in here. About 2 years ago, we got a restraining order against my daughter and got her out of the house because she's violent, not particularly towards us, but destruction. My house is still, I've gotten a lot of it fixed, and it's a lot, everything's quiet because she's out, and our relationship is healed, but I look at like the laundry room door that's still broken, or the bathroom door that has cracks in it, and it's a reminder. I mean, that rage, you know, I had to go somewhere to try to help me because that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I'd rather like go through childbirth, be divorced 20 times, anything, rather than to throw my children out. And she and I are like ridiculously close, always were, but we have a weird relationship. Even now, we're close. That she says, I know it's not normal because we're like best friends. It's not how mom and daughter normally are, but that's, she said, that's how I feel. I want to tell you everything. And sometimes that's still a problem because I don't know how to say, like, I don't think I should know everything. Because sometimes the everything that you tell me that you think you can't tell anyone else is killing me. And I can't do anything about it, and I want to so badly. I mean, there's things in her private life, like with her boyfriends or with her school or with her job, that I can't do anything about it. But, I mean, my tools from my program, and just also a lot of therapy involving codependency, have helped me. And every day I have to talk to myself, talk to my sponsor who has a lot of the same issues, and just try not to keep on doing everything for her. Because, you know, a couple of years after me doing that, she said to me, one time I was crying, talking about like how much it hurt and how awful I still feel about how that all happened. And she said, don't be sad, Mom. Like, that was really hard, but it was the best thing that you could have ever done for me. You always hear people say that. I've heard people, one of my clients is somebody from AA, and she was a lot of support for me during that time. And she said her daughter did the same after being thrown out. And I just thought, that's never going to happen. Well, it was pretty quick that it did happen, because she learned, first of all, the world is a lot more expensive than you think it is. When Mom's dishing out cash, you don't realize how much money it is. And then she also had a lot more appreciation for all the things that I have done over the years. So it's kind of ended up being really nice, but that was, you know, that was terrible. It was really terrible, and I hope I never have to go through anything like that again. But if I hadn't done all the things that I did leading up to it, I wouldn't have had to do that. If I would have made her work and not hand her money every time she asked to try to shut her up, because every time somebody's screaming and making a commotion, all we want to do is just shut them up. And I know that I would probably still do the same thing, either that or just push her out sooner, because you can't take it. So, and the threat of violence or the threat of harming yourself when it comes from somebody else, it's just, that's intolerable. I don't know. I still feel really helpless. I want to help people that I think they're going to hurt themselves. And maybe sometimes you can, I don't know, help them, direct them in a different place, but you can't stop them. You can't get anybody else clean. And I don't know how long I'm supposed to be talking, but I'll just try to summarize. Like, so a few years ago, almost 6 years ago, I met the man I'm married to now. I met him through my sponsor's husband was his sponsor, if that followed that. And it's a long story, but like he's a musician, and I was going to try to be a music promoter, which didn't actually end up happening. We play together, we perform as a duo, acoustic duo, every month, at least once, twice a month. So that's even better than being a promoter, being part of it. And anyway, I was interested in him, and I said, oh boy, you know what, this is probably not the best idea, because if I like him, something's wrong with him. And also at the time, well, he's another person who, he pulled himself up out of the gutter and got clean. But I didn't, at first I didn't know that, because he has amazing recovery. He's as somebody put recently, he's poetic when he shares. It's just, it's beautiful. He could be a preacher or something. He's from the South, so he sounds like it's here. But I was afraid because he actually had gotten clean at the rescue mission, and he'll tell this story. So I feel funny telling his story, but he'll tell it. He told it at his graduation speech at Mercer County College because he was the student speaker. Like he's really bright and really wonderful, and he pulled himself up from being homeless, went to a rescue mission, lived there and worked there and paid rent to stay there for like he was there for 2 years. He didn't have to be, but he stayed there because he didn't have a car, and that was his job, and that, you know, that was it. And when we met, I thought, well, great, this is perfect, and I'll just fall right back in to this trying to help, and I can't do that anymore. But he didn't want me to do that. Things ended up working out. He ended up moving in. A long story I won't even tell, but after only 6 weeks, we knew we were in love. In one day, I knew I was going to be with him forever, which sounds like a movie, and I never thought was true, but it is true. It really is. And he moved in, and we don't even fight, and we both go to meetings together. We open and close 2 meetings together, and we both sponsor people. I have sponsored too many people, actually, but that's, again, there's not a lot of people that have, not a lot of women that have time left. People keep dropping out, which I hope they would stop doing that, because a lot of my friends that have as much time as I do have been recently gone. And anyway, our marriage is not a codependent marriage. I can't believe it. Like, I never thought I'd have any kind of relationship with anyone that wouldn't be the same thing all over again, or marrying the same guy again, because all my husbands and boyfriends were always my dad, who was not an alcoholic or an addict, but behaved like one. Sorry, Dad, if you're listening too. But I'm not going to tell them about this address to look this up. But I don't blame my parents. I don't. I was born this way. I always wanted, if something's good, I want more, and I just want to keep having more till I'm sick. And I have to fight that with sugar. I have to fight that. I quit smoking finally, like 3.5 years ago. But like deep down, I kind of will always be a smoker, even though now I'm so repelled by cigarettes to the point that people call me a reformed smoker and that I'm awful. But I don't, you know. But I feel like that sudden feeling sometimes. But it passes, you know. That's what the whole thing about not using. Like, you know, you have urges, but they pass. Any kind of craving, maybe it'll come back again, but it'll pass again. And like that's what I have to do. Like lately, I'm working with not overeating and not eating sugar anymore. So I'm doing that, and I'm also trying to just help others, but remember not to help others to the point where I get so stressed out and exhausted, like I have been lately. Remember to take care of myself, and I don't know, life is really good. I never thought it could be this good, but like just staying clean and working the steps, and I've gone through the steps, by the way, like several times, and actually I feel now like I'm always working at least a few at a time, just in my head. I don't really do a lot of writing unless something's really bothering me, and then I'll just write. And I don't know if I'm starting to like drift around, so I'll just close with that, but I really thank you guys for having me share.
Thank you.